Welcome to Carefree and Conscious, paranormal and profound authors with stunning true stories. If you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe. I'm your host, Suzanne Wilson, the Carefree Medium and Intuition Educator. Today on Carefree and Conscious, Love After Death. When your partner transitions, is continuing the relationship an option? William Murray and Mary Beth Spanmank emphatically say yes. I first became aware of William and Mary Beth's work through the Afterlife Research and Education Institute when I was on their board of directors. They are pioneers in encouraging those who decide to continue their relationship with their beloved partner after one has transitioned to the other side of life. If you visit redstringsociety.com, you'll find a link to the Facebook group called Love After Life, where like-minded souls support each other. You'll hear about experiences of people who have joined their group and learned how to astral travel, connect in dream visits, receive and send signs with their loved ones who now live in spirit. You'll also hear about Mary Beth's work helping the Leslie Flint Trust and the books that William Murray has written. And now, Carefree and Conscious, Love After Death. Mary Beth and William, welcome to Carefree and Conscious.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having us.
I am so excited to have you here. We met at an Afterlife Research and Education Institute conference. We just met in passing in the hallway, but I certainly knew who you guys were because I saw all the feedback from the conference several years ago. And I also was on the board that was helping to select the presenters. I was so thrilled because you guys are helping people in an area where I see there's so much assistance needed and so few people talking about it. And that is how our relationships that we've had with our beloved, our partner in life, continues once one of us has transitioned to the other side. I have so many clients as a medium and an intuition educator too, who have asked me, how do I continue this relationship? How do I know I'm not crazy, that it's really real? Where's a safe community that I can discuss that I have an ongoing relationship with my loved one in spirit? You too have pioneered the answers to all of those questions. So everybody listening, you're going to want to listen to this whole thing. I promise you, you will not regret it. Even if your loved one in spirit has not transitioned, you're going to learn a heck of a lot. I want to ask you, well, first I want to clarify that you are not each other's partners. You each have a partner in the spirit world. Can you help for our audience define what you consider to be a continuing relationship with a partner in spirit? What are the characteristics of that relationship? What does it look like?
First of all, for me, it started with, my own experience. And I didn't really know anyone. When my beautiful husband, Paul, passed in 2016, I didn't really know anyone who had what we would call a continuing relationship at all. And so I was really, by myself in this. And the only voice that I followed was, I'm a big follower of Abraham Hicks. And Abraham Hicks is a group of non-physical entities that are channeled through Esther Hicks. And a few years before, several years before Paul passed, her beloved husband, Jerry, passed. And so that was really helpful to me because a lot of the conversations that they would have centered around this. And they said something that was so phenomenal to me that I had never heard before. And they said, through Esther, they said that Esther's relationship with Jerry, which had been her husband, which had been magnificent while he was here, had gotten even better after he died. And I remember where I was thinking to myself, well, I don't know if that's possible for me, but I'm going to try to get as close as I can. And their prescription for having that kind of a relationship was to do everything in your power to help yourself feel better, because the better you felt, the easier it would be to sense your partner with you. So that's where I started for myself. And then, since then, which has been obviously a number of years now, and in talking with hundreds of people in this situation, I've learned a tremendous amount about, other people's journeys and how it's not exactly the same for each and every person, but there are similarities among all of us. That's what I would say.
Okay. William, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that yes, we can help in that. The group has a lot of resources. Uh, it can be done, and we can help with that. Um, like I said, we have a lot of resources, a lot of information, a lot of support. And the group is very kind and supportive. It's an amazing group. There are techniques that I'm sure a lot of your listeners are aware of, but there are techniques for connection, and you obviously know a lot of them, that that can help you bring into greater and greater focus and connection, communication, and interaction. And so we have seen this effect. The other part of the group is we're not a grief support group. So it's okay to express grief. I mean, we're not trying to get people to shove it aside or bury it, but we have some very supportive means and methods of not mitigating, but just working your way through the grief to a happier state. And what I have found in the 7 years this group has been up is that just having a place to talk about it, talk about your relationship, talk about your partner, and to express your love for them, and for all that, to people who understand it, who know what you've been through, who accept it, is an immense relief for these people. And I would say that over time we have seen many, many people come into the group and they couldn't speak 2 words without bursting out sobbing. They were in such pain. And over time, and it's a different amount of time for other people, it's not like a linear chart or anything, your progression, it's different for everybody. But over time, these people have not only overcome the bulk of their grief, some of them are beyond it entirely. I know Mary Beth and I are beyond it entirely. But they have become very happy with their current relationship with their partners in spirit. They are pretty satisfied with it. They find it exciting and magical. And Mary Beth and I have often said that this is a very unique opportunity to explore your relationship with your romantic partner. It's not like anything else. It's not like you're both here, and it's not like you're both there, but you have this kind of dynamic where you get to explore this relationship in a very unique opportunity. And that's one of the things that we have found very fulfilling.
Well, the group that you're mentioning, and I mentioned in the introduction, is called the Love After Life Facebook group, and is for people whose romantic partners or spouses have passed and who wish to transdimensionally continue the exclusive love relationships they share until the time comes when they are fully reunited again. So if you have a partner who has transitioned and you're newly grieving, do you recommend that people go through that heaviest grief first and then start to work on the transdimensional relationship, or do you think it's a day one thing?
Mary Beth, why don't you continue to go first and then I'll follow.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, as William said, when Before I answer your question, and I will, I just have to preface it a little bit with the fact that when my husband passed about a year before William's wife, but they were close together, felt fairly close in time. And originally, I joined what I would consider to be a traditional grief group, and it was mostly women. Mostly women are, not that men don't experience these things, but for whatever reasons, you know, most of these groups are made up largely of women. And so I went to this group and it was all women. And some of them would say, and this is not to judge or to ridicule anyone, but I would read things where people would say, my husband passed 35 years ago and I sob every single day. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't do that. And then I found a different group that was dedicated to, it was more of what I wanted. It was a Facebook group, but it was for people who never wanted to repartner. And so I thought, well, this is, you know, this, and they would honor everybody's different grief journey. But the unique thing about that group was that they really didn't like if people began to feel better. And the reason I know that is because William was in that group. I had never met William. I never talked to him. I still, to this day, we've never met in person. I live in New York. William lives in Texas. So we've never even met. But in that group, William started saying that he was feeling like made a conscious effort to begin to feel better. And I was doing that already. And I had a conversation with so what happened was the admins of that group were not happy with that. They said that set the bar too high, that no one could ever really feel better and better, like to the point where you had no grief. And
wait a minute. The admins were like, you'll never get over this. You're going to grieve forever. Is that what?
I was invited to be one of the admin. I didn't join in this conversation, and I don't want to, and I'm, you know, of course, never going to name anyone, but they were saying things like, this guy is holding the bar too high for our group, that he's saying he's feeling better. And I talked to my sister, who's not in this situation at all, and she said, Mary Beth, I think it's time to move on. And just like you were saying about Eben Alexander, when you talked to him, I messaged William and I said, do you want to start our own group? And he said, yes. And so our group originally was just us and the two of us. And it was really based, to go back to answer your question, it was really based on the idea that you can have a wonderful, satisfying, transdimensional relationship. And I've learned a tremendous amount from William, truly. And we've had many, many discussions that are very lengthy because we really wanted to do this right. And we really, of course, are, you know, crazy in love with our spouses, but we also wanted to not misadvise people. Let's say that. So when this group started, we would say to people right off the bat, we're not a grief group. Neither one of us are counselors. We're not a therapist. We're not psychic. You know, I'm a kindergarten teacher and I use puppets, and William was a computer guy. I said, we're not even all that bright. We're just two people who have gone through what you've gone through. But the thing I got from William, one of the things that was right off the bat, was that he was the one who defined this as a transdimensional phase in our eternal relationship. And just thinking of it that way, that this is just a phase, and it can be a very magic, as William said, magical and beautiful phase if you know, get kind of in the right, to use the vernacular, you know, get in the right head about it and look at it from a particular perspective and behave in particular ways that support that. One of the things we do in our group is we do not, for example, teach people about the afterlife. And we don't really focus on grief either. Like as William said, if people express, you know, people sometimes in the Zoom group, you know, we were feeling better and the window would open, and people would burst into tears. And at first years ago, I didn't really know I was like, oh, I thought everybody here would be happy. But that's, you know, of course not. Of course not. Of course, we got people who were at all different ages and stages. We have people in their 80s and people in their 20s from all over the world, all, you know, men, women, all different. all different circumstances, every single circumstance you can imagine for how their partner passed and how it's received in their families and friends and all of that stuff. But I think the most important thing was that we didn't focus on the grief. We allowed it, but we never, I always think again about what something Abraham said. Abraham says, if you're walking down the road with a friend and the friend falls in a hole, it doesn't help your friend if you jump in the hole after them. So if someone's very, very upset, of course we listen to them, but we don't say, oh, you poor little thing. Oh, I feel so sorry. We don't. We just hold steady to what we know is true and what we know can be true for them. And William has one more thing he always says. It's so helpful. He says, you know what? You can grieve your heart out from now to the day you die or not. But everybody at the end we've already won the romantic lottery and everyone at the end gets the same prize. And so, it's not
Wow.
really up. Yeah, isn't that cool? It's not really up to us to, sometimes in the course of the years, I would be frustrated with people like, come on, people, you have all the information. Can't you feel better? But again, it was William who said, you know what? That's up to them. And you don't know what they've planned out for their life, what their life path is. And so I've learned to respect all the different ways people have of expressing their grief or not, but we don't really kind of jump in there and kind of trying to get them to hurry over it or anything like that.
Well, even now, there are outside of the community of those who have partners on the other side, there's two camps in the teaching of grief education, and that's how long will my grief last? How long are you going to be alive even to the last day? And there's the camp of once you understand and trust the greater reality that there really is no death, only the body dies, that grief is healed. And to me, as a medium and somebody who's seen the so-called past for my whole life, I can tell you it's like all one continuum to me, literally and viscerally. This is something I know in my gut. And I think we have a problem with terminologies sometimes around grief. And there are those who have their masters in counseling and PhDs and things like that that are working on that. So pain can be present, but you guys have found a way to make it into joy, and the bittersweet more sweet from what I can see. I'm really glad that you found each other and you started this group. Now, you said something that I don't understand, and that is you don't teach about the afterlife, but yet William's written two great books. So, William, I would like to ask you about your afterlife books. And did I get that right, that you guys don't really teach about the afterlife in the
Oh,
group?
we have resources that we try to keep our group as open as possible to people of different spiritual or religious or secular perspectives. And so it's not, we don't set ourselves up as teachers, you know. It's we have information that you can read from us or from that we have written or from other sources
Okay, it's
you
like peer
like
to
you
peer.
yeah,
It's literally peer to peer
right.
support.
Like I'm sure, yeah, it is. The book that you wrote, Soul Smart, is one of our resources in our group, and I'm going to say why it is, and that's because it is the only source I found after my wife died that said that this type of relationship was possible, that we could continue these kind of relationships with the people who have died, and I found that very comforting and encouraging, and I appreciate it a lot. But among other sources, there's all kind. We always vet our sources so that we uh, kind of prevent some stuff that's a little more troubling, or the ones that say that these relationships don't last or that they're not. So we always vet our sources before we're very protective of the feelings and the anonymity, and because Mary Beth and I have been through them. I mean, you can't read something these days from any community without it having something, almost without it having some type of negative perspective on some of these things. And so we want to make it as safe a route as possible and as supportive a route as possible. And but of course, the members are free to watch anything they want, go anywhere they want, and get whatever information they want. We just try to arrange a list of sources. So about teaching about the afterlife, it's we offer our views, and in the Zoom groups it comes up a bit, and I'll talk about it. And I've always told people this is my opinion. I'm not some wise guru or anything. This is just my opinion on these things. You're free to throw tomatoes at me or ignore me or whatever. And so we're there to because we have people who come in who have no idea. They have no idea about any of this. So they don't even know where to start. And a lot of them, they get started reading some books or whatever, and they're terrified. Am I going to be, has he already reincarnated? Am I going to have to reincarnate? This book says that these relationships don't even exist over there, that it's all a big, glowing ball of oneness, happy oneness. Everybody loves each other equally. And so what I think our group universally wants, and it's something I completely support and believe in, is that yes, we can, when we die, and even now, but when we die, we can have physical bodies, we can interact with our person physically, we can kiss them, we can hug them, we can hold them, we can have a house, we can live. A lot of people in our group just want to live their normal life with their partners, after death. So we have resources that will help them see that. Jurgen Zive offers a lot of really good resources on that, but several other people do.
One of the things that I'm proud that we did is what William said, is that we will express our own views. We each have our own views and opinions about things. And William has taught me, I really look to him as he's real. I always say he's like 2 steps ahead of me, but I'm a good student. And he always, whenever he expresses something in the group, he always prefaces it by saying, this is just my opinion. This is what I believe. You don't, and I always say, and I learn from that. And what I say is, before I offer, because people do, even though we're not the teachers, people do look to us sometimes as leaders, even though we don't necessarily see ourselves that way, but they look to us as people who have been in this for a while, and you feel way better and I feel horrible, and how can I feel like you, and all that. And so I always say things like, here's how I think of it. I call this a take it or toss it idea. If this does not resonate with you, it's not for you. If it resonates with you and it's helpful, I'm glad. But the other thing, one of the things that William and I agree on in a lot of the spiritual groups, people see themselves as helpers. And I certainly love to help people. I mean, I'm a big helper in my life and all of that. But I didn't found the group to help other people. I founded the group to help myself. And my whole thing is that if I can help myself first, if I put myself first of all, then of course, Paul is, he's my heart, he's my love, and then I can feel him better with me. It's better. It's good for him if I put myself first. It's good for the group if I put myself first. So because when I put myself first and I feel better, then I feel more altruistic and charitable and compassionate and all of that. So my whole thing is, I'm not out to, save the world or all that, but I'm first and foremost out to help myself. And then any loving I believe, that's my belief. It comes out of that. That may not be other people's belief. Other people feel that their life is dedicated to, first and foremost, to helping other people. But that's one thing that William and I really agree on. I don't want to speak for you, William, but that we kind of agreed on, from the start, and that gave a good foundation. The other thing I want to point out is that one of William's books, he has 2 books out that are both terrific. The second one is called Forbidden, and it talks about the idea that this type of relationship does not get a tremendous amount of support in our culture. If you have especially if you're younger, William and I are older, but like I said, we have 20-year-olds in the group, and they're constantly being told to repartner. And there's nothing wrong with repartnering. If you want to repartner, that's perfectly fine. Absolutely zero judgment on that. But the problem is sometimes people don't want to repartner and they found their person. And in society, they don't get a heck of a lot of support for that. And there's almost zero support for feeling no grief at all. So I like the fact that we put out that different kind of message that, yeah, if you want to repartner, that's fine. That's fine. It's up to you. But if you don't, and if you want to remain in your relationship and deepen it and have it become even better than it was when your partner was physically focused on Earth, then we're your group.
There's a very important point that you just made among several, and that is that a relationship can deepen when one person's on the other side of life because they don't have the distractions anymore of earthly life, and you can communicate even more frequently. And that's super important. I've liked the fact that you guys are validating the continuing relationship. When I wrote Soul Smart, the first edition came out in 2017, I actually had a hard time finding people to interview who would talk to me about continuing their relationship with their partner or spouse on the other side. I did a series of interviews to find out what that relationship was still like. And it was embarrassing for most of them, and because they didn't know that it was okay. And I remember one woman saying to me, she was in her late 30s, early 40s, she would go to meet a friend for lunch and there'd be a surprise blind date set up for her there. And she had just come from meeting her husband in meditation, having this great conversation, was riding that high. And then she faces, this loving but manipulative intercession in her life. I think you're part of a groundswell of people realizing that we're still connected no matter what. And this is very helpful, hopeful, and healing. You've also studied past evidence for the continuing of the relationships and presented on that evidence. And some of the best evidence that we have for the life after this life, it comes from Leslie Flint. And so I was wondering if you could share some of your observations about the Leslie Flint tapes. I'm thinking of Annie Nanji, or anything else that you want to share.
Yes. Yes. William, if I may. Yeah, I love Annie Nanji. Before we talk about this I just want to say one sentence. When people do things like throw that party that you were talking about,
Yes.
when they say, typical things people say are some things like your husband would want you to be happy, honey. Go online, look at the dating. It's really because they don't want you to be alone and be hurting.
Yes.
And what I found is that as time goes, I mean, I got some of that in the beginning as well, but as time goes on, people kind of go back to their own lives. And the benefit of feeling better yourself, you're not presenting to other people this, and I don't mean by presenting like faking, but I mean, when you genuinely feel better, people stop thinking that in order for you to have a fulfilling, wonderful life, that you have to repartner. And so they mean well, they truly mean well. But that's often a big discussion in our group because a lot of people have family and friends who are not supportive of this, and they think that it's, a little cuckoo crazy. But Annie, the Leslie Flint tapes, I came to them through the Victor and Wendy Zametz Friday Afterlife Reports, and they come out with that every single week. And I read a little excerpt about a recording. And so for people who don't know who Leslie Flint was, he has since passed, but he was what they call a direct voice medium. And unlike mental mediums who can channel your loved ones and relay their, their thoughts and messages to you, a direct voice medium, in seance, they can hear the spirit voices come into the room. So the medium hears the spirit voice as well as what we call the sitters, the other people who are in the seance. And the reason that's so phenomenal is that when you have a mental medium, no matter how magnificent they are, the best mental mediums will say this, that it's not always perfect because it has to go through their own sensibilities and their own coloring, they call it, or channels, whatever. But the direct voice medium, the voices came into the room not through the medium, through the, I guess you could say, psychic gifts that the medium possesses, but the voices could be heard by every single person in the room. And the reason I was particularly drawn to Annie Nanji is because her husband, who was a scientist, they were married, and Annie Nanji died after a very brief illness. And her husband was beside himself. And he went around the world trying to find somebody who could bring him a message. And he finally came to Leslie Flint, this direct voice medium. And for nearly 15 years, he met with Leslie Flint twice a year and sometimes subsequent days in each meeting. And Annie would come to him and talk to him. And she would tell, granted, she was one person on the other side. So she doesn't represent every single person on the other side. But she would say to him such encouraging things. She would say that she could read his thoughts and that when he would think about her, she would be right there. And she was with him every day. And that the world on her side was so beautiful. And even though he was speaking with her, which is like a dream for any of us, to speak with our loved ones on the other side, he was somewhat of a romantic and would lament. He would say, "Oh, my darling, I miss when we used to walk in the park." And she would say to him, "Oh, but anything that we experience together on earth, we can recreate here and relive. And it's even more magnificent." And one of the best things she would also reassure him, as William said, she would reassure him, she would say, "Our world here is more solid and real than yours is to you." And one time one of my favorite things, he said, "Oh, my darling, when I kiss you, will you be able to feel my kiss upon your lips?" And she said, "Oh, but of course." And this just like buoyed me so much. It was like, oh my God, I can be with Paul again. I can feel his arms around me. I can have this ongoing relationship with him. It was so exciting and so uplifting. I'm so thankful to the Zametz and also to the Leslie Flint Trust. And I became close to the trust because the trust had many recordings and some of them were transcribed. And when you had the Annie Nanji recording, she spoke with a Swedish accent because she was Swedish. Her husband spoke with the Indian accent, not American, Native American, but from India. He was from India. Then you had Leslie Flint, who had a British accent, and Leslie Flint's spiritual helper or control, they call him, who was a spirit on the other side who helped bring these voices in. Mickey, his name is, and he had a Cockney accent. So you had like 4 or 5 accents going on. It's difficult sometimes. You have to listen carefully. So I volunteered to transcribe some of them because the Leslie Flint Trust is run by volunteers. So I volunteered to transcribe them, and they took me forever. And right now on the trust is overhauling its website, and some of the transcriptions they're going to be put back, but they're not on there right now. But the point of it is I did about 5 of them, which took me forever. But I listened to every single syllable of every single one and became very enamored with them. And I felt like I knew them. And it was so reinforcing about everything that William and I believe in and everything we care about. And so when people lament on this side, when our members, when they'll lament, oh, he missed my daughter's wedding, or no, he was, first of all, he's right there. Second of all, you can have a second wedding over there. And the whole thing about being solid and real. One more thing quickly I want to add is that when William was saying that sometimes our members, when you begin to educate yourself about the afterlife, you run into all sorts of information that is, sometimes not easily taken in by someone who's grieving. And I remember reading a book about it was a book about reincarnation, where they felt like a little child had reincarnated from a famous baseball player. And I freaked out. This is right after Paul died. And I freaked out thinking, oh no, what if he reincarnated without me? What if he crossed over and met someone he really loves more than me? Well, and I have to tell you, Paul and I had a magnificent relationship, but that's what happens to people. And they start to speculate and spin out of control. And that's where I met Brian Smith. And I was saying, well, and I didn't know Brian Smith from Adam. He's also someone I've never met, but I've come to know his work. And here's something he said to me that I think is helpful. I always repeat this to our group members who also spin out of control with the what ifs and the fears. He said, Mary Beth, all you have to do is manage your life between now and the day you die. And then when you die, you'll be reunited with Paul, and you and he make your decisions together the way you always have. And that made it so much more manageable to me. Like all these little things were like puzzle pieces. And so Brian saying that, Annie Nanji saying everything awaits you, William saying this is a wonderfully romantic period that everybody is not granted. Everybody doesn't have this period of time to prove how much we love and adore our partners. One other thing William said, and I'll be quiet. He said, this is a relationship like none other. A lot of times people lament that they haven't received enough signs. Oh no, I didn't get signs. Where are the signs? And William would say, send your partner signs. Any relationship is a back and forth relationship. So instead of like wishing and hope, of course you can ask for signs, and of course you can look for signs, and of course you can relish the signs. But you can also send them signs. You can write them a poem. You can do a million things. I won't take this away from William, but in one of our groups, I made a big image in Canva, and it was for Valentine's Day, 50 plus ways to love your lover. And it was more than 50 ways to show your affection and love and connection and all of that to them. So that was kind of a new thought for me. Thank you.
Wow, a lot to unpack there, William. We've got to ask you now about all those ways for connection, and there's so many. I obviously we're not going to cover them all here today, but can you give us like the top ones that you recommend for having that relationship, keeping it going, sending them love, and also, if you don't mind, along the way, tell us about Irene, the love of your life.
So I would say that the easiest and short-term and long-term way to connect to your partner, connect to your person, that not only helps build and strengthen your capacity to do it for the future, it provides some immediate relief from your grief, but it also helps kind of reprogram your subconscious into accepting this relationship this way and building it. And I know this often sounds trivial to people. It's use your imagination. Okay, that's all you need to do to start with. And so these are the things that I started with right off the beginning. I started with imagining myself with Irene, imagining her here with me, imagine her walking around with me. I imagine her, we would always sit out on the porch and smoke and drink coffee. And when I would go sit on the porch, I'd set her coffee out, and I'd actually reach over with my lighter and act like I was lighting her cigarette, which I always did, and I would just sit out there and talk to her. And um, I would also spend time. A lot of people have a really difficult time early on remembering, okay, because it triggers the grief. And so I did too. So what I initially did was I would lay down, and it's kind of a quote unquote meditation type of thing where I would just spend time visualizing myself with Irene, either right now or in the future when we were together in the afterlife, and just doing things in the afterlife. And so that's one is just imagine, or I'm going to use a word here, and nobody take it the wrong way. Just pretend they're with you. Imagine they're with you. Act like they're with you. Talk to them out loud. Um, uh, Talk to them in your head. Um, Set their coffee out or set their tea out, or Mary Beth would even set it like sometimes I think you go to a restaurant and get food for them or whatever. But yeah, that's something that you could do. Um, so that's one. Number two is affirmations. Yeah, I'd use affirmations as a means. Now, I want to explain. I approach all this from a psychological perspective, not really so much of a spiritual perspective. But I'm I have kind of trained myself for decades in reprogramming my psychology. And so I know that the affirmations are good tools for reprogramming your subconscious. And so that's imagination, affirmations, and a deliberate internal narrative. And that deliberate internal narrative is, uh, you know, I know you're right here. It's kind of like an affirmation, but I know you're right here with me. I know you love me. I know you still exist. I know you're still there. I know that we're together, and I know that we'll be together. I'm very happy. I'm very enthusiastic. In the beginning, even if I was laying on the floor crying, I would be saying these things as an attempt to reprogram myself. And so my personal view, not for everybody, but my personal view is that this has two effects. And one is these things put you in the psychological state uh, that is best for reception and interaction with your partner. And it's like exercising that capacity. And the other part of it is it changes your subconscious, your like your subconscious programming to, and it's been in clinical studies and medical studies, it's been shown to actually rewire the synapses of your brain when you do this kind of thing. And it's to rewire it from always going down like a rabbit hole to one of joy and happiness. I mean, you can actually tell yourself, smile. And, one of my things is smile and talk about your partner happily, and dance around and feel good and play some music that makes you happy. And crack jokes with them and treat it lightheartedly and have fun. Talk about Mary Beth talks about her invisible Paul when she talks to other people, and I think that's a wonderful way of doing it. And to just feel good. I'm also a big advocate of doing whatever you can to make you feel good because I think that helps. And so I think these practices, of course, there's many other practices that people bring up, tune you in to your person. Your loving statements for them, your loving attitude for them, your happiness, your joy, your your visualizations with them, your imaginations of them. It's tuning you in and rewiring your brain literally to be in better contact with them. And all I can say is that for a lot of us, but for especially for me, it's worked like I could never have imagined it working. When I started this journey, I already had these techniques from other stuff I had done long before. And all I was trying to do was get to the point where the pain was manageable for the rest of my life. That's all I wanted to get to. That's all I had hoped for was I could just get the pain to be manageable because I was in bad shape. I was in total despair, total, complete despair. So if I could just make this pain manageable, I'll be all right. I might be able to survive this. I had no idea it could be this good. I had no idea it could be this fulfilling, this happy, this thrilling, this magical. I had no idea that this could be accomplished.
Oh, what is Irene's personality like?
I'm sorry, babe. I forgot to talk about you.
No,
So,
we're getting there. We're getting there.
uh,
I feel like she's around you all the time, especially now because you're going to be talking about her.
well, I've told this in the group, told this story many times in the group, but when I first met Irene, the thing that immediately I had already been married twice. I was not looking for another person, for another wife or for another romantic relationship. Uh, but when I met Irene, it was when she started talking to me. We started a discussion, and it's just like something just went off in my head. I had never met anybody who was as direct and blunt and honest as this woman. I couldn't believe it. It was like I had found something, found someone who I had been missing my whole life. I never encountered somebody like this, and she is. I call her my uh, redneck hippified gypsy queen. And so she's a little southern. She's a little redneck. She's a little hippified, and she's a little gypsy queen. And she is very direct, very blunt, very honest. She is not scared to get into a physical fight with somebody, and very tender, very sweet. I mean, as long as you're not, giving her a problem.
Don't mess with her and you won't find out that stuff, right?
I discovered all these aspects about her, of course, over the course of our lives together. But she can be very, very childlike in the sense of just like having innocent fun. She's all about innocent fun things and doing innocent fun things. But if the boot hits the road and we have to go do some damage somewhere, she was all in. I mean, she was ride or die. She was ride or die with me, and we were like, um, she was. So for me, you have to understand is that so I've never in my life imagined I could love somebody that much. And she told me that she couldn't believe how much she loved me. It was like a revelation that that type of love even existed to me. I didn't believe it. People talk about true love. And you have all the songs and the Hallmark cards and stuff, the movies. I found out it's real. It actually exists. But she has stuck. I mean, I'm far from perfect, and she stuck by me through some of the worst stuff I've ever done in my life. And she supported me. Uh, she never once. This is another crazy thing that I just found mind blowing. She never once criticized me. She never once nagged me. She never once tried to get me to change anything about me. She never complained that if I wasn't working at the time, like you should go get a job. Never said that. If I said I wanted to write a book, which early in our relationship I wrote a couple of books, not the books you're talking about. She was. I mean, she didn't care. It was just whatever I wanted to do. She supported me. I had never encountered that. I had to change myself to be more like her. Because I couldn't believe that this human being existed like this. So, there was a lot of things about myself because one of the things I realized is you've got to be a better man for this woman because you're not good enough for her. So I spent a lot of time changing things about myself so that I felt like in some way I kind of deserved this woman. But that's the kind of woman I really was.
This is love. This is a true testament to love when that person accepts us as we are unconditionally. That's amazing. And do you consider Irene to be your teacher?
Well, I would say we both realized that we were. I hate to use that word.
Yeah, no, that's why I used it. It feels like it's kind of triggering because you want us all to come to our own discernment and our own conclusions by gathering information. So I thought, well, let's try that word one more time.
Well, here's the thing: is I can't teach you about your path. I can't teach anybody about their path. I don't know what their path is. I don't know what they came in here to experience. I could be trying to teach her out of, one of the first major experiences I had with Irene was an astral projection for about 15 minutes. I was with her physically in the astral, completely conscious, never lost consciousness, and we were having a discussion about our children. And before I entered the projection aspect or flipped over to the astral side, we were having a discussion of our children. The discussion didn't skip a beat. But as I was over there, just wondering how the heck did I get here? What is going on here? This is the craziest visualization I've ever experienced. I didn't even realize I was having an astral projection at the time. And our conversation went to what could we do for our children from the perspective of being in the astral, because they came here to experience certain hard things that we would naturally want to protect them from, but we shouldn't, because that's what they came here to experience. So, it's like Mary Beth was talking about grief. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to I don't have the capacity to teach anybody anything, because they are on their path, and they may be on a path of grief the rest of their life. They may be on a path of who knows what, drug addiction, whatever. And if somebody asks me for advice, like if my children ask me for advice, or we get into a conversation, I mean, I'll say things from that perspective. Or ask me, how did I do it? Well, I'll tell them how I did it, and I'll tell them it may not work for you, but this is how I did it. So I'm here to offer information from my perspective and from my life. But I just don't see myself as a teacher. Now, here's the thing: is that Irene and I, it's like the yin yang symbol. We both had strong points and weak points. Okay, and it's by being together, we kind of gradually, through osmosis or whatever, and a lot of it was deliberate on both of our sides, is that she saw things in me that she admired, and so she kind of incorporated those things into her. There were many things about her that I admired greatly, and I wanted to incorporate those things in me so that I could be, like I said, a better man for her. So if you want to phrase it like we taught each other stuff, I mean, I guess that's valid enough. It's just that I don't I don't like setting myself up as that, because I'm just a guy who's gone through some experience and I'm willing to share it. That's all.
And I guess an aspect of this too is, do you have a belief that this is part of a plan that was made, like before you incarnate, that one of you will leave fairly early and you're going to find your way back to each other before both of you leave? Like one will be here, one will be there. Do you think that was part of some setup?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Here's my view on the whole plan thing is I believe that we have good. I'm sorry if I'm hogging this, Mary Beth, but I believe that we have things we want to experience when we come into this world. So you can call that a plan, okay? But I also believe a big part of it is organic, because you don't know what you're going to think of while you're in here, okay? So it's organic. Now I do believe that, of course, we have. I kind of feel like this world is like we're kind of we're dreaming ourselves into this world from the astral. So we're also there while we're here. This is just where our consciousness is focused on while we're here. So I think there's uh, back and forth, a kind of an organic process, because if you come across something, or you think, okay, now wait a minute, I want to do this over here instead of this. I think that's totally available. But for Irene and I, about her dying, absolutely, I think it was part of the plan. And I think it was part of the plan for a lot of people in the group, for one of them to die first. Of course, that kind of normally happens. But as I've said many times, grief was the most revelatory experience I ever had in my life. Her dying was the most revelatory experience I've ever had in my life. And because, as I've often said, it's only when you are in love with a person and you cherish that person. And I thought I knew how much I loved Irene. I thought I knew what she meant to me. But when she died and there was nothing in me but a big gaping hole, I realized she meant everything to me. And it was, excuse me. And so it was that that revelation is priceless. It's priceless to find out just what this person you love actually means to you, how deep it goes, how broad it goes. That you can't find that out unless you love them, and then they die, and every fiber of your being is saying they're gone forever. It's over. You'll never see them again. And that's when you come face to face with everything they mean to you. And so yeah, we came in here to experience that, and I am so grateful for having that experience, because that experience I can carry with me. It's not like I don't ever want to have it again. I don't ever want to go through it again, but I want to have that memory for eternity. So I will always have the knowledge and the understanding and the emotional content that provides of my love for Irene, because that's what it feels like to not have her, to think she's gone.
Well, now I really appreciate that. I'm really touched with how you express the contrast between having her here and you guys really appreciating each other and growing together, and then feeling the pain of not having her physically here, but then finding a way to continue the relationship. She's got to be awfully proud of you. And now I want to ask Mary Beth, what does Paul think of all this?
Paul had pancreatic cancer, and so he it's basically almost always a death sentence. He had an extremely rare and very, very aggressive form of cancer. So I knew that eventually, this would probably end his life. But I tried really hard to focus when he was ill. We tried really hard. We didn't call it a cancer fight. I said to him, can we call it a journey? And he said, okay, that's fine. So we focused on like all the gifts that came with that. And people would say, well, in a way, although the disease is difficult, at least it kind of prepares you for the death. But it didn't. It didn't prepare me at all. When Paul died, I felt like the analogy I give people is I felt like a train hit me and then caught me on the back end of it and dragged me over cut glass. Every single thing hurt. My body hurt, my thoughts hurt. It was like having the worst disease and feeling like every day, day in and day out, it was exhausting. And sometimes our members, especially newer people who come in who see, William and I feeling so wonderful and this is such a magical thing, they don't realize that we both went through that searing grief that was so, I don't even know how I lived through it. But as William said, that grief is a gift because it reveals that, as he says, the depth of the love. I thought I loved Paul as much as any one human being could love another. We had a magical, easy relationship. You know how they say relationships are work? Our relationship was no work. Paul and I had met in high school. We dated in high school, and I fell in love with him then. But we were both 17 years old. And he said to me on our first date, he said, Mary Beth, I really like you and I want to go steady with you. We did that back in the day. We exchanged high school rings. He said, but I'm probably going to be going away to college, which was not common for my friends and me. We grew up in Buffalo, New York, and most of the kids graduate. Most people didn't even go to college. But Paul was our very, very bright, and he was our class valedictorian, and he was going to go to Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute and all this. And he said, when I go away to college, I want to date a lot of people. So I'll be true to you. I'll go study with you, but I don't want you to count on me for forever. And so we went together and I proceeded to fall head over heels in love with him. We had a really lovely relationship, even as teenagers. And then one day he just, held out the ring to me, the ring I had given him, like, this is it. And I remember I cried and I was so upset. But I thought, if you really love somebody unconditionally, you want for them what they want for themselves. And if Paul wants to date other people, I have to let him do that. As painful as that was. And so then it turned out we reunited online 35 years later. And I was in a marriage to a lovely person, but we had been in counseling for 9 years. And Paul was also married, and we were lived in different parts of the country. But that feeling came back immediately. And it took, I mean, we were both in marriages with children. His kids were older and mine were younger, but it was not pain-free. But the way it turned out was that Paul and I got together, and Paul became friends with my ex-husband. And he was there at all, we were together for holidays. We were together with our kids, Paul's kids and everything. And so that all worked out. And to the point where when my daughter graduated from college, we went back to New York for her graduation, but Paul was very ill. He became worse and worse and worse every day of the trip. And one day my daughter said, Mommy, would you go with me to pick up my graduation dress? And I said, honey, I can't, Paul, and he said, no, 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 go. This is why we came here. And I said, I can't leave you. And my ex-husband, we were staying in my ex-husband's house. And he said, go ahead, Mary Beth, I'll take care of Paul. And I thought, like, in what universe does this happen? It all worked out so beautifully. And Paul he couldn't do enough for me and I couldn't do enough for him. And it was just the most magnificent pairing. And we had 10 years together, but in eternity would not be enough. So, yeah, so I'm very happy that we have an eternity. I'm very happy that William and I got together. I'm very appreciative of everything I've learned from William. And I really don't have any grief. I don't even think, people say, oh, I wish my husband were back. I wish my wife were here. I don't even think that way. I just think of everything that we have to look forward to, everything we have now and everything we have to look forward to. And we're just so, I consider myself so enormously lucky to have this awareness in my life. And I don't know if you feel the same way, William, now, but years ago we were talking and William said, here's the way I figure it, Mary Beth. If I go through the rest of my life and I close my eyes and there's nothing, then it doesn't matter. But I've had Irene for all that time. But what I really believe is going to happen is I'm going to close my eyes on this side and open my eyes and be with her. And then I will have shown her all those years the depth of my love for her. And so that's how I live every day. I feel extremely fortunate, and like, and it colors every single part of my life, all my relationships, my work, every single thing. So I'm very appreciative for that. And that's what I wish for everyone else. Thank
Well,
you.
I can see why you two found each other and partnered together to form this Facebook group. It makes a lot of sense. The common thread that I see with you is, number one, you're not suffering grief anymore. And number two, your gratitude. That's been the common theme throughout this entire hour, is how grateful you are for the relationship you had here, the one you still have, and even grateful for the experience of the separation, because it's temporary. So you've never said that people have to get immediately to that stage, that it's a process, and been very supportive. I have another question for you, William, about your books. I want to know where we can find them and why did you write, and I'm talking about the two afterlife related books. Why did you write the books? What do you want people to get out of each one, and where can they find these books?
Well, they're available on Amazon. Anybody who joins the group, I give a PDF copy to for free
Wow.
if
Okay.
they want it. And they're set at the lowest possible price on Amazon, like maybe $3, I think, for each.
Love After Life. One is Love After Life, How I Defeated Grief and Developed a Fulfilling Relationship with My Soulmate After She Passed. And then Forbidden, Essays on Transdimensional Relationships. What are the essays, different people's?
No, there's I think, what is it, 3 or 4 people who provide a prologues in the book. Mary Beth is one of them. And what they are is basically what I did was take things that I had written in various, like in our group or in the Zamet's group or on Reddit or some other place about these relationships. Uh, because over the course of a couple of years of interacting in the group, I got an education about because I personally face no resistance to this personally. My family is all for it. You know, my friends are all for it. I got no resistance whatsoever. You know, I got nothing but support personally. But what I found out is there's an incredible amount of resistance, and not just like Mary Beth said, a lack of support. There's pushback against it. People experience pushback against this, and in their families, in their uh, at their work, just in their social circle, and on many different levels, they are condemned or avoided, or people get impatient with them. Uh, and one of the things that I was a real education to me, like the group is like 98% women. Okay. And what I learned is this is especially difficult for women because they're like more, there's a whole lot of social structure involved in them being paired up with somebody. And when they're not paired up with somebody visibly, they get a lot of flack and they get a lot of like unwanted attention. They have to deal with that. They're I'm just going to say this, often in a much more vulnerable situation. So there's a lot more that's going on, and I'm so grateful that we have some really great uh, moderators and admins who understand all that and can deal with that much better than I could, because it was shocking to me. Some of the things that have happened that these people have experienced are just shocking to me. So the essays, and the reason I went into that, are just a collection of things that I've written. And like one of the essays is about all of the things, like when Mary Beth was saying, uh, he would want you to move on. All of the things like people tell you, and so that particular essay was kind of humorous. I made it kind of humorous about how to respond to those things, and another essay was about things that I heard in spiritual groups. One of them is like you're holding them back, and it's like they have an eternity. What are we holding them back from? Are they going to miss the bus? What's going on here? Or what? They're supposed to be elevating their love, and I said, what about this love? Were we holding them back when they were here? I mean, so it doesn't even. Can they not walk and chew gum at the same time? So there's a lot of like humor in the book, and some of it is like an examination of the cultural influences that kind of I feel like led up to the um the deflation of the romantic love concept, and some of the social contributing factors about because you would rarely ever say to somebody who lost a child, well, you can have another child. You just kind of wouldn't say that. But people seem awfully free to say, well, you can always remarry. You can always find somebody else. You can find love again, like there's some kind of toaster that you can go buy a new one. It's like, no, some of these relationships aren't like that. This is my only. This is my one and only, who is everything to me. I know who she is, and it's who I want to be with for eternity. And so there's just like different commentary on the challenges that people make, the kind of social conditions that we're in. Uh, I believe there's some stuff in there about maintaining your maybe developing and maintaining your transdimensional relationship. But the first book is more about that. It's very short. It's like 46 pages long. It's very short. It's basically just, this is how I did it. So I didn't start writing that book until I was completely free of the grief, and I was being happy again. I was enjoying my relationship with Irene again. And so all I wanted to put out there and collect was, this is how I did it. And I guess you could say that's one way where I decided, instead of, for people who are going through this and there's almost nothing out there for them, I wanted something to be out there for them if they happen to find it. It's not like I try to market the book or anything. So I just wanted to put it out there in case somebody is led to it or so they can find it and respond to it.
Well, we're very glad that you did. Again, for our listeners, the Facebook group you're searching for is called Love After Life, and read the criteria and send a request to join, and you'll be with like-minded people.
We had this, so we get a lot of cross personal signs and synchronicities. And so we're always reporting on things that we experience, see, or encounter. And sometimes we know it's for somebody else, and sometimes it's just kind of happens. So there's this one person in the group, one woman in the group, and early on in the group, we would do this kind of group imagination thing where we all pictured ourselves on a cruise ship, with our partners in the astral, and then we talk about it afterwards. What did we see? What happened? And see if there were any connections. If we spotted the same thing or saw the same thing. What happened was this one woman who was just still dealing with some of the grief. She started her imaginative thing about the cruise ship and just had an astral projection experience with her partner on the cruise ship that lasted for hours. It lasted for hours. And they did all sorts of things. It was completely real. And for her, it was like an ultra real experience. It just lasted for hours and hours. Where she after they spent some time on the cruise ship, they walked off onto the beach. They saw Irene. They saw another person's wife. Described them perfectly. What they were doing was in perfect characteristic for both of them. Saw a bunch of other people. Then they walked up, and like there was a little town or a village up. They spent some time up there. I mean, it just went on. She said it just went on for hours and hours, and it blew her mind that it happened. She'd never experienced really anything quite like that before. She'd never had an astral projection experience. So that's one. Another experience I'll talk about is that we were having our Zoom group meeting one day, and this one woman was talking, and the rest of us were like in chat going, "Do you hear that music? What is that?" And we were talking about that sounds like a wood flute. What is that? Is that a wood flute? And she wasn't aware of what we are talking about because she was talking, and we noticed the wood flute sound would always only start up when she was talking, and it would end when she stopped talking. And so she couldn't hear it. She couldn't hear it at all. And so we kind of interrupted her and said, "Do you hear that wood flute? Oh, on your end, because it's coming through whenever you talk." And she was just like, "Oh my God." And something none of us knew was that her partner played the wood flute. None of us knew that.
Wow.
And so the moderator of the Zoom group was trying. She was asking, "Well, what did it sound like? What was it, a tune or a melody?" And so the moderator said it went like this, la da 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 da, and immediately the wood flute came on and matched it, la da 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 da. And we've had a lot of experiences like that, a lot of experiences.
Oh my gosh, evidential. Love truly does live forever.
Even if somebody's at my house, I pour Paul a cup of coffee if I'm having coffee. But some days I wouldn't drink his coffee, and I would just pour it down the drain because it would get cold and, gross. And I remember thinking, I don't know, this seems like it's kind of a waste. And then unrelated to that, I had a medium reading, and she, da 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 da, she's giving me all these different things. And she said, "I don't know, I don't get this, but he's saying to me, it's not a waste." And I knew exactly what it meant. It was like, "Thank you for doing that, my love. And it's not a waste if you don't drink that." And so it was so confirming of so much to me that, he saw that, he appreciated it. And also what we tell people is that when you do things for your partner, instead of always being frantic that you're not getting things, when you turn the tables and you begin giving them things, it gives you a measure of control over this, over what feels like a very uncontrollable situation. And it gives you a way to concretize your love for them in very real ways. Whether it's, you know, a cup of coffee, or, you know, you make their favorite pan of brownies, or whatever things that you can come up with. And that's very, I thought that reading really confirmed that. So thank you.
You've shared a lot with us today, and thank you for all of the work that you do. William, Mary Beth, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Visit our website, carefreemedium.com, or find us on social media @carefreemedium. Thanks for supporting Carefree and Conscious.